Wondering how to access your retirement funds before you turn 59 and a half? Well, then today you have come to the right place. Well, welcome to another episode of A Worthwhile Retirement. My name is Jacob George, and a quick reminder before we get started here today is that while I am a financial planner, I am not necessarily your financial planner. Even if that is the case, just know that this information is general in nature, presented to a broad audience, and that means that it shouldn't be taken as investment, legal, or tax advice specific to your individual situation. All right, now that that's out of the way, while I love retirement accounts and their favorable tax treatment, one restriction that might get in the way is that generally you cannot access retirement funds before the age of 59 and a half without incurring an early withdrawal penalty. And if you're planning on phasing into your retirement before then, well, this could prove to be an issue. But what if it was possible to bypass this restriction and begin making withdrawals before that point, before you're 59 and a half? Well, today's episode is the first in a series of episodes about how to do just that. How can we access our retirement funds before we turn 59 and a half? Generally, it makes sense when you leave your job to roll over your old 401k or 403b plan into an IRA. After you've left your employer and you're no longer receiving a contribution match, then an IRA generally gives you more control to invest broadly in the capital markets without all the costs and fees associated with an employer plan. But there are circumstances why it could make sense not to roll it over. The most common reason is called the Rule of 55. Now, the Rule of 55 states that if you leave your employer in the year that you are turning 55 or older, then any withdrawals that you make out of that 401k do not incur the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So if you're needing to access your retirement funds before you're 59 and a half, it might make sense to leave your old 401k plan open if you think you might leave your employer in the year you're turning 55 or after that. For instance, let's say you retire at 57 and you have to wait until you're 59 and a half to access your funds. If you were to roll over your old 401k, like you've always done in the past, into an IRA, then you have just forgone the ability to access that money penalty-free. You have forfeited the opportunity to withdraw those funds without incurring the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So if you're needing that money before you're 59 and a half, it may have been prudent for the first time in your life, maybe the only time in your life, to have left that 401k right where it was. Now, there are other methods of accessing retirement funds before you're 59 and a half, but one advantage that this rule, the Rule of 55, has that none of the other methods do is that the entire 401k balance is available to you penalty-free. Now, of course, you still have to pay taxes on this money. If these are pre-tax dollars that you haven't paid taxes on, you still have to pay taxes on it. But let's say if you have $500,000 in your 401k, then that entire balance of $500,000 is available for you to withdraw penalty-free. There's not a limit of how much of your account this provision applies to. And that is pretty amazing. And this could even be a reason that it might make sense to roll over an old 401k plan into your current employer's plan when you start a new job. Because, by the way, the Rule of 55 only applies to the plan with the employer that you're leaving in the year that you're turning 55 or older. So old plans from previous jobs where you're not working there anymore, the rule of 55 does not apply to those plans. Had you rolled over those plans to that job that you're now leaving, then the rule applies to those balances as well. Now, one caveat that I do want to be sure to mention is that technically, the plan administrator with your employer is not required by the IRS to allow employees to enact this rule. Now, they're certainly incentivized to do so, but before counting on taking advantage of this, just be sure to ask your plan administrator whether or not they allow for this. They usually do. Okay, before we wrap up, another quick thing I want to get straight is that the rule of 55 applies to the employer that you're leaving in the year you're turning 55 or older. And this means that even if your birthday isn't until December, you could quit your job in January when you're still 54, and yes, the rule of 55 would still apply to you. In this case, even if you had just turned 54 a month ago, if you will be turning 55 in that calendar year, you are clear to start making those penalty-free withdrawals. So that's it. The rule of 55 allows you to access funds in your 401k or 403b penalty-free if you're leaving the employer with whom you had those plans in the year you're turning 55 or older. Now, let's say you don't have much in your 401k, or let's say you've already rolled it over into an IRA. Well, don't worry. There are still other methods of accessing these funds before you're 59 and a half. So, be sure to tune in next time as we start discussing more of what those methods are. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.